You've reported he lost somewhere in the neighborhood of, I believe, $700 million in Truth Social within the past few months. But you also mentioned he's had a graveyard of failed business ventures like Trump Steaks, Trump University, and GoTrump.com. Did he lose a substantial amount of money with those as well?
Those ones, no, because those were mostly licensing ventures. So that's sort of the no risk approach. I'm going to say to a company, hey, I'm going to make your steaks or whatever a branded steak, and somehow people are going to buy a bunch more of this. And so the company pays him a fee in order for him to put his name on it. But he doesn't really have to do much work. I mean, sure, he sends a few lawyers to sign contracts and that sort of stuff. But it's not like he's out there slaughtering cows and making them into steaks. He's just putting his name on the thing. And so ultimately, when those businesses went belly up, the people who were left holding the bag were the companies that wanted to brand their thing with Trump, not Trump himself. He gets less in fees, but doesn't really have huge losses from those ventures. Certainly, there are others in which he has had big losses. For example, in Atlantic City, in the Trump Plaza or the Plaza Hotel in Midtown Manhattan. So he's had his share of up and downs for sure.
He started as a real estate mogul, obviously. He then transcended in this tabloid celebrity. He was the host of The Apprentice. Did this celebrity figure of Donald Trump help his net worth?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, The Apprentice was huge for him because remember, after those initial bankruptcies, banks were much more cautious about lending to Donald Trump. The idea that he couldn't get loans from anywhere is not true. He did get lots and lots of money, even after those early bankruptcies. But he was having trouble getting loans from sort of the A-list companies. And, the ones that would be willing to lend to him might be willing to lend to him only at slightly higher interest rates. So as he's having trouble getting financing, what he does is he goes on television and he becomes a TV star. And that is a huge financing tool, essentially, that puts hundreds of millions of dollars of pure cash. He doesn't have to take loans out to get it into his business, which allows him to expand into other ventures, for example, his golf and clubs business.
Now his net worth today is Forbes estimates it at $2.5 billion. Can you break down what assets make up that fortune?
Yeah, so in total, he has about 30 assets. If you look sort of by categories, New York City real estate is roughly $750 million of that. This is all after debt that I'm counting. Truth Social and his licensing ventures, you've got about $200 million there. Non-New York City real estate, so this would be like his hotel condo in Las Vegas or the tower that he owns part of in Chicago. Those are another, call it $225 million, something like that. And then he has basically a big collection of golf courses and clubs. So this includes Mar-a-Lago, but it's also, 10 different courses around the country. That adds up to, at this point, somewhere between $700 and $750 million. And finally, he has sort of the rich guy lifestyle stuff. So we'll count cash in this, which at this point we estimate at $425 million, much more liquid than he's been in recent years. That's largely due to refinancing an office tower in San Francisco and selling his hotel in Washington, D.C. But then he also has a bunch of mansions, a mansion in Bedford, New York, another one in St. Martin. Of course, he's got the penthouse at Trump Tower. He has 3 homes right alongside Mar-a-Lago. So all these sort of things that don't necessarily bring in a ton of money, but nonetheless are worth a lot of money.
As you mentioned before, he's a polarizing figure. He continues to be a polarizing figure by being in 2024 again. He just got indicted. Will these continued events impact his net worth? You mentioned that it's not good to be polarizing if you own hotels.
Yeah, certainly I think that it's unlikely that Donald Trump becomes more polarizing in the future than he already has been, and than he is right now. I think sort of that damage is done. The things that you have to look out for now are his abilities to expand. So, for instance, when Donald Trump signed some of his lending agreements for the DC hotel, for his tower in Chicago, and for a resort that he bought down in Miami, as part of those lending agreements, he had to tell Deutsche Bank, who was his lender at the time, that he had not been indicted or convicted of a crime. He can no longer tell a bank that. So you have the question of whether this is going to impact his ability to get financing at standard rates. I do think that he will be able to borrow money. He's got valuable assets. And time again, he's shown that there are always lenders. They might not be the A-list lenders, but then you go to the B's, then the C's, then the D's, and eventually somebody will lend to you. The trick there is that you, in doing so, might have to pay a higher interest rate, which cuts into your profitability and the amount of cash that you can take out. I don't think that Donald Trump is going away, but I also don't see his fortune going through a big growth spurt really for the rest of his life. But you never know with Donald Trump. I mean, he could come up with something. He almost did with True Social. It just seems to be petering out.
You've reported that investors were initially excited over the news of his indictment. Do you think this excitement will be short-lived, or will that have some life and some legs?
I do think that it will be short-lived. You've seen over time as various news events have happened. For instance, when Donald Trump announced that he was running for president, saw shares of the Trump, DWAC, the SPAC that's going to merge with Trump's company that oversees True Social. You saw shares spike at that point. And then what tends to happen is they spike really dramatically, and then they sort of peter out over time, and they get back to baseline and even travel down below it. And that's really been happening since this SPAC that's going to merge with Trump's company has been trading publicly, all the way from the first spike when it went to 175, and it went way down and then a little bit up and then way down, and just sort of news events send it spiking back up. But ultimately you get to what are the fundamentals of the business, and the fundamentals of that business are not strong.